See, Red taught by example. He didn't, except rarely, take you into the corner and get in your face and tell you this stuff.
Before he became Mr. Miyagi, Noriyuki Pat Morita walked away from a stable career at Lockheed to risk it all on stand-up comedy. Broke, uncertain, and booking smoky lounges to half-empty rooms, he found a champion in comedian Red Fox, who didn't just open his stage, but his heart and wallet to a young comic once told he'd never walk again. In Pat's own words, you'll hear 3 unbelievable stories of kindness, mentorship, and astounding generosity, along with details of Mr. Morita's own struggles that almost ended his career before it ever started. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Mr. Miyagi's mentor.
I spent 9 years in a hospital. From ages 2 to 11, I had contracted spinal tuberculosis and was immobilized with a cast from shoulder to knee. There was a priest used to come visit the wards. Father Cornelius O'Connor, you see, would come to visit all the little children in the ward. Father O'Connor befriended me, long story short, and he said, I'll never forget his wonderful quotation. He says, and if one day I ever convert you, you little heathen, your name will be Patrick Aloysius Ignatius Xavier Noriyuki Morita. I'm working the club, his place on La Cienega one night, and we had maybe 12 people. And they all happened to be seated down front. Now, I had what we call a quiet act. Quiet meaning I talk to people, I'm a conversant kind of a guy. It's called a warm-up act for whatever's going to follow. So this one night, I got to talk to you after the show. I don't know what that means, you know. Sure, Red, hand him the mic, he does his thing, knocks the 12 people out. He says, now look here, I want you tonight. I'm sitting in the back of the room. You know, son, you got to talk to the cheap seats. The cheap seats? He says, you talk with down here with these people and you talk like you talk, but you gotta talk into the microphone so the people in the cheap seats can hear you back there, even though you're talking to all the little folks up here. You got that? I never forgot it. Never forgot it. Where it came into play was at the Apollo Theater. See, Apollo Theater is grand. You got 3 tiers. It's a crowd. It's a crowd of, I think about 700 or 800 people, whatever, huge, compared to working little clubs. So he's not saying you gotta work broader, but work so that you can still work here in front of you. They'll catch it, but you gotta let them hear it. If they don't hear the words, they miss it. So that was a lesson well learned.
And this could only happen in America. He took me to the Apollo Theater. Where is a Japanese guy in the whole world ever gonna work the Apollo Theater? And you know, he had a tough time convincing me. He says, oh, come on, Pat, just be yourself. I said, Red, I ain't been Japanese since December 1941.
I was escorted from the hospital by an FBI guy to join my parents at an internment camp in the middle of Arizona. What do kids know about wars, you know? I was happy to be walking. They said this kid would never walk. And I felt like I was some kind of big deal because an FBI guy carrying a piece, I mean, being escorted, you know. The first one we were in was called Gila, G-I-L-A, as in the Gila River. Uncle Sam and we Americans, we like to use euphemistic words or invent words if we think certain other words are too harsh. So they call them relocation centers. He didn't remember, but I had met him in San Francisco when I was just breaking into the business. And so I introduced myself. Hi, Red, I'm Pat Morita, and I'm a comic, and I'd like to work for you. And he goes like, Pat Moroni, Pat Morano, Pat Morita. That sounds Italian. Why don't you go out and get a good Japanese name like Honda, Mitsubishi, Panasonic, Sony, you know. So it was always a a little thing between us.
I remember in the old days, when we was first getting started, he used to have clever ways of introducing me. He'd say like, "Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Kamikaze Mouth. The world's shortest colored comedian. My friend, the albino pygmy." But with his success, he's kind of mellowed, I guess. He's beautiful. And you notice he's getting a little darker, too.
Explained to Red, chance to buy a house, etc. And escrow is going to close in 4 days. I'm $3,500 short, and I'll work it off. I'll pay you back any way I can, etc. So he said, $3,500. Ain't got no small change on me right now, but calls his secretary over with a thumb snap. He said, "Bring me my checkbook." And as he's writing, before he signs his name, he says, "Now look here. I don't want to hear about no papers, no payback, no interest, no IOU, no nothing. You want to pay me back? I know you're going to make it one day, son. You do this for somebody." Never forgot it.
And Pat Morita was good to his word. He paid it forward, not with fanfare, but with quiet resolve. The boy, once bound in a body cast, told he might never walk again, rose to help millions stand tall through laughter, grit, and grace. And when he made it, he gave back, generously, to Shriners Hospitals for Children, the very place that healed his spine and sparked his spirit. It was there, in the quiet care of a kind-hearted priest, that young Noriyuki found not only his footing, but a name fit for the stage, and a purpose that would echo for generations. Additionally, they say, though he never confirmed it, that he once handed a $3,500 check to a struggling young comic named Robin Williams, just as Red Fox had done for him. But we'll never know. Pat didn't seek that kind of spotlight. Just like Red, he sought to pass it on. In the end, maybe Red Fox saw in Pat a kindred soul, a brother from another mother, or in this case, another continent. Both were proud Americans, despite being treated like anything but. Red was relegated to the segregated Chitlin circuit, while Pat was literally relocated to a segregated internment camp in Arizona. Red knew the score. He showed Pat, not through speeches, but through action, that to make it in this business, in this country, when you look different, you have to punch above your weight. You had to laugh at yourself just enough to disarm the crowd, while never losing your dignity. And most of all, if you did make it, you had a duty to lift up the next one in line. Because if you didn't, who would?
I recall a little incident when Pat and I first met. We almost got into a little argument. He told me he had a black belt. That was supposed to frighten me off, I guess. I told him I had a brown belt with a 38 in it. We've been friends ever since.